So today we are going to review comparing and ordering decimals. So first I want to review with you what those words mean. So what does it mean to compare numbers? Well, to compare numbers, it means to see which is bigger. Okay. And in order to do that, we use the symbols greater than, less than, or equal. Okay. And usually that's just two numbers that we're comparing. Okay. So what does it mean to order numbers? To order numbers means to put them in sequence. Okay. Meaning 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. That's an order. That's a sequence. So normally we have three numbers or more. Okay. And for both of these, comparing and ordering, I'm going to show you a strategy today that will help you be able to know both of these questions. Okay. So first we're going to go over here and we're going to do, this is comparing. Okay. Because there's only two numbers. So what we want to do is we want to decide which of these numbers is bigger so that we can write one of these symbols. Okay, please remember this is greater than, this is lesser than, and then this is equal. Okay, I know in younger grades they sometimes teach you when you're first comparing numbers to think of the alligator, you know, because these symbols kind of look like an alligator mouth and the alligator wants to eat the bigger number. And I'm okay with that analogy. That's okay. However, you do need to know that these are what these symbols are called. Okay, because these that you're looking at right here, this is a number sentence. Okay, we don't normally think of it as a sentence, but it is. And so, which one of these so the symbol that I use in this sentence is very important because if I put the wrong one, then I'm saying that the wrong number is bigger or lesser than the other. So what I teach students is basically a line them up, cover them up strategy. Okay. Now it's kind of harder to do the cover it up part on in a computer because, you know, we have to look at the screen rather than at our piece of paper, but we can still sort of do it. So what I want you to do is I want you to take the second number, so 7 and 344 thousandths, and I want you to put it underneath the first number. Whoops, I messed up. Ignore Lincoln in the background. The mailman is here. Okay, so what I want you to always do is you always line them up. Okay, notice how my decimal is right on top of each other. Okay, that way I know that I have my ones together, my tenths, my hundredths, and my thousandths. So I'm going to start on the left. Okay, so first I look at the ones place. Well, both of these are the same, so that doesn't tell me which one is bigger or less. So I go to the next place value, and I see that a 5 is bigger than a 3. That means that this 5 number has to be the bigger number. I don't even have to look at the other two place values. If the digit in the tenths place tells me which one is bigger, then I don't have to look at the hundredths or the thousandths. So that tells me that 7 and 539 thousandths is greater than 7 and 344 thousandths. Okay, and there's my number sentence because I would read it just like that. 7 and 539 thousandths is greater than 7 and 344 thousandths. So we're going to do the same thing down here. I'm going to take my second number and I'm going to write it underneath my first number, making sure that I'm lining up those decimals. Okay, and if you can do this without writing it like that, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to write it if you can already tell, because I mean, most of us can look at this and tell which one it is already, right? So the ones is the same, the tenths is the same, and the hundredths is the same. So yes, on this one, I have to look at my thousandths. And since the 9 is bigger than the 2, that means that this number is bigger. And again, I would read that 9 and 202 thousandths is less than 9 and 209 thousandths. So now we're going to do some ordering. Okay. In ordering, I have 3 or more numbers. And I pretty much do the same strategy. It's just with more numbers. Okay. And instead of using symbols, this time, once we find our answer, we rewrite the answer in the correct order. So it's very important for you to pay attention to directions because the directions will tell you what order it needs to go in. Either you're going from the greatest number to the least number, or you're going from the least to the greatest. That's super important because almost every time that a student gets ordering decimal questions wrong, it's not because they did the wrong strategy, it's because they did the wrong order. Okay, so let's say that this direction is asking us to go from greatest to least. That means I want the bigger number first. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing that we did before. I'm going to take these 3 numbers and I'm going to write them down below this. Okay, so that I have them all on top of each other. Okay, making sure that I pay attention to the place values. So this is 9 and 37 hundredths. Okay, now notice there is no place here in the thousandths. There's no digit. So I can add a 0 because adding a 0 does not change my value. Then I have my next number, which is 9 and 3/10. And again, I can place zeros in those place values so that they're all into the thousandths. And then my last number is 9 and 219 thousandths. All right, so just like when we were comparing, I'm going to look at one place value at a time. So I'm looking at the ones place and I see that they are all 9s. So that does not help me. Okay, so now I'm going to look over here at the tenths place. Not quite sure why it does that. Here we are. All right. Now, remember, our direction says greatest to least. So looking at this, what this tells me, it tells me that I have 2 3s. So I know that these 2 numbers have to be my first 2 numbers because 3s are bigger than 2 and 1. And I know that since I'm going greatest to least, that this 1 has to be my lowest number. So I'm going to put a 4 next to that because I know it has to be my last number going greatest to least. And because of that, the 2 would have to be my next to last number. So now what I want to do is I want to look at that thousandths place right here. Okay, but I don't have to worry about these 2 numbers because I've already put them in order. So really, I'm just looking at this 7 and this 0. So I know that 7 is greater than 0, and I'm looking for the greatest number first. So this 7 number is my first number, and the 0 number is my second number. Now, this that you see here is the strategy. Okay, that's how we find our answer, but it is not the answer. The answer is then taking these numbers and rewriting them in the correct order. So I said that the greatest number was 9 and 37 hundredths. And the second was 9 and 3/10. The third was 9 and 219 thousandths. And the smallest number is 9 and 120 9 thousandths. All right, so let's do one more together. Okay, now don't get confused because there's lots of zeros. That's okay. We do the same strategy. So since the last one was greatest to least, let's do a least to greatest on this one. So I'm still going to rewrite my numbers, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of rewrite them a little bit differently just to have more room because it was kind of cramped. So like when I was over here on this problem, you know, all of this work right here, it was a little bit cramped up. So I'm going to give myself a little bit more room this time. So I'm going to write them a little bit bigger. I'm going to write all of them, making sure that I am paying attention to my decimal and putting that in the correct place. Okay, so looking at the ones place, that does not help me. Okay, that tells me that they all have no whole numbers. Looking at the tenths place, now this helps me just a little bit. Okay, since I'm going least to greatest and I see zeros and ones, that tells me that this number and this number have to be my first two numbers because they have a 0. And since both of these have a 1 and I'm going least to greatest, those have to be my last numbers. Okay, but just looking at that place value doesn't tell me which one it is. So I know this has to be 1 or 2. This has to be 1 or 2. This has to be 3 or 4. This has to be 3 or 4. But I don't know what number it is. So I need to go to my next place value. Okay, so this is like a 1. Okay, and this is like a 0. Okay, just look at this right now. We're just going to compare these two numbers. All right, so which one of those is the least? Well, that would be this one with the zeros, right? So that has to be our number 1. And so then this one has to be our number 2. Okay. And then in order to figure out 3 and 4, look at this. We've got zeros there again. So it's like a 10 and a 10. So that doesn't help. So we do have to go to the last digit. Okay. And this right here, if I think of whole numbers, this is like 100. And this is like 101. So which one of those is bigger? 101. And so since I'm going least to greatest, that means that this is my 4th and this is my 3rd. So again, I want to rewrite those in the correct order. So my first number is 1,000th. My second number is 12 thousandths. My third number is 100 thousandths. And my last number is 101 thousandths. And that is your comparing and ordering lesson for today.